Hey guys, welcome back to Jan's opening clinic. I should add a disclaimer here that I'm not a real doctor. You guys might have guessed that. But I still like to practition opening theory. So let's see what we have in store in this, I believe, season 22, episode 4. Let's start with, who's that? Yapper10. Yapper10 is saying, "Hello Jan, I'm back with another question about the Rossolimo. So last time you concluded that the old main line with 7 knight d7 in d takes c6 is no longer playable. I followed your advice and went back to the chessboard. Clever. Back to the drawing board. To study some other positions. I did not like the positions arriving after 10 queen d6, following, for example, Anand Carlsen Sinkfield 2018. Seems to me that black will hold on that line, but will never develop some real activity." He's talking about the position after 3 bishop b5, g6, bishop c6, dc6. In the Sicilian, we'll put it on the board eventually. That's why I started looking for lines for b takes c6, that's the sharper alternative to d takes c6, and did some work on the lines with 6 knight h6 and 8 f5. There's one particular line with a piece sacrifice included that I'm worried about. Long line, I'll put it on the board. So my questions are, how do you evaluate the rising positions? Move 21. Normally if you get to move 21, then you just trust your compy. We'll look at it. Does black have enough compensation? Is there a moment in the line where white can improve? For example, 11 bishop f4. And last, but only if you can make time for it, there is also the possibility to escape a lot of theory by playing 6 rook b8. What do you think of that move? I'm sorry for asking so much questions, but it's coming from a Sveshnikov player who is in need for a good repertoire against the Rossolimo, because 80% of people play 3 bishop b5 nowadays. So that means you're a Rossolimo player who has a good sideline against the 3 d4 stuff called Sveshnikov, no? Anyway, let's get a chessboard and see what Yapper is talking about. I'm a bit out of my depth here, but that's only credit to Yapper because he's doing his work and I'm not sure how much I can help him out. So he's talking about bishop takes c6. We previously, sorry, I can't speak, talked about d takes c6, and now Yapper has moved on to b takes c6, the sharper line. Castles bishop to g7, rook to e1, and knight to h6. Very avant-garde concept. So the point, as far as I can understand, is after c3 castles, if white goes d4 with really can't speak, which looks natural, then black is supposed to be fine after cd, cd, and d5. Therefore, white players have moved on to the more cunning move h3, not giving this target on d4 yet, asking black to play a move. And the move that black players have settled on is the move f5. And after e5, knight to f7, we get a very weird position, where black seems to have a lot of long-term potential with his 2 bishops and his pawn mess in the center. But he does have the problem that it's very hard to get this bishop into play, while white, even though he's not very developed just yet, has a somewhat easier plan of getting the pieces to decent squares. So Yapper starts with bishop a6 after d3. White shouldn't go d4 here, but instead keep the tension in the center. There are other moves here as far as I know, but bishop a6 has been the main line. Bunch of Gelfand games here. And then he's talking about a very specific line after 11 c4. Let's go down his line. First, c4, I'm assuming he means e6 in this position. I think he didn't put another move, but I'm assuming he means e6, knight to c3 and g5. Very aggressive play by black, who wants to go h5, followed by g4. Bishop e3, maybe not the only move, but certainly the most logical, hitting the c5 pawn. Now computers, if you let them run, will probably tell you that the immediate g4 here is not great for black. Therefore, black starts with pawn to h5, reinforcing g4 so that he can go h takes g. And here, Yapper is concerned about the move knight takes g5. Would not occur to me, frankly, without my engine switched on. So if your opponent gets here and blitzes this out, this is very serious level of prep from both sides. I'm more primitive, of course, and I would be mainly concerned about bishop takes c5. Trying to grab the exchange when I find it hard to evaluate in these positions after g4, bishop f8, king f8. Well, computers say knight d2. We don't open the h file. Bishop takes e5, queen a4. And the best move was bishop all the way back to c8. If black has full compensation here or not, but his position does look very nice. He does have the two bishops. He has a space on the king side. But yeah, that's certainly another line that I would be checking more if I was black here. If you can go c5, or the comp gives some strange move like bishop to d6. Because we are a full exchange down, even though maybe that's just too simplistic understanding of the position on my part. And black is fine. Computer gives rough equality, so there is certainly hope here. Anyway, Japar is asking about knight takes g5. Knight takes g5. And now bishop takes c5. Basically giving a piece to avoid the g5, g4 advance. Seems like the best black can do is knight back to f7, f4 and h4. And we get this very strange position. Queen h5. Once again, not all the moves are too obvious to me here. But those are the first computer moves. So I will not argue. d6, e takes d6. Queen to f6. Knight e2. Thing is, once you reach such levels of detail and depth, we're move 20 here. Normally it makes sense to evaluate it as, yeah, that's kind of playable. And take it from there. I would be very surprised, even though maybe after asking this question. Things change if you get prolonged opening discussions in these positions in your games. Because who gets here? Anyway, rook 81. Once again, here one could probably make another random move and also start analyzing. But rook 81. Rook takes d6. Bishop takes d6. Knight takes d6. I normally evaluate these positions by whatever the computer gives. I'm not smart enough for this. Like, looking at it, I can't even tell what side is supposed to be better and why. So I just give it as, I don't know, unclear is a bit of a cop-out, but I certainly think it's playable for black. And if you have that level of depth in your preparation, even if you think the resulting position might be dubious if both sides play perfectly for over the board, I'd always be reasonably comfortable here. Still, one can, of course, continue analyzing knight c1. The position remains extremely strange, but it does feel that black should have enough dynamic potential here. We do have two bishops after all. So yeah, I believe this particular line looks playable for black to me. As Japar mentioned, there are alternatives early on, and that's a thing. Instead of going deeper in that line, I'd spend more time here. Like, there is the move. Bishop to f4, which I think Caruana played, which looked very, very sensible as well. There's also, as my computer mentions, the move knight bd2. But mainly this bishop f4. I think you should spend some more time on getting a repertoire. And generally, yeah, hats off to you and your dedication to getting a repertoire against the Rossolimo. This b takes c6. It's sharper, it's more dangerous. The positions are less intuitive than playing d takes c, bishop g7, put a pawn on e5 and take it from there. But there's also more upside in these sharp lines, so I'm not against it. What else do I have to say? Not much. You mentioned the move 6 rook b8. That I think is considered a bit dubious because of e5. At least that's what my comp tells me. So I probably wouldn't go here. Then f6 doesn't work after d4, cd, bishop to f4. Or at least it looks insanely dangerous. And knight to h6 is what they play. And Compy was happy with some slow setups for white, like b3, bishop b2, knight f5, d3, whatever, d6, knight to, no, let's say h3, bishop e6, knight to c3, or knight bd2. And this looks like a good version of, I don't know of what. Good version of something. Anyway, I prefer white here. Probably knight c3 is better, so that after d5 we can hit this pawn with knight a4. Therefore, I think I would stay away from rook b8 and spend more time in these knight h6 positions, which are very complex and honestly a bit over my head. But they do seem to offer enough upside. Yeah, continue the good work. Japar 10. Who do we have next? We have Mr. SirAlbis. Sorry for the Mr. SirAlbis. He's saying, "Hi Jan, thanks for the great work." Thank you so much. I am classical QGD player who likes to play knight f6, bishop e7. QGD stands for Queen's Gambit Declined. Chess lingo, y'all. Who likes to play knight f6, bishop e7, knight b7, stuff like Kramnik. I think there's gonna be a more detailed question about this in a future episode. I've seen one further up the list. But in Swiss format, with this kind of opening, sometimes it's hard to win with black pieces. That applies to a lot of openings. And unfortunately, most of us, we have to play in Swiss formats. What should I do if I have to win? I'm considering to play d5, e6, c6 or d5, e6, a6 kind of things as a backup. Fighting repertoire or something like Benko Gambit. Which openings should I choose? Or do you have any suggestions besides them? It's the eternal question. How do I play for a win with black against 1d4, which we've talked about a lot in one version or the other. There's no correct answer because, yeah, in chess, white starts and he's quite solid if he wants to be. But we all face it from time to time. And yeah, I've never been comfortable playing the Benoni and the King's Indian, which are typical play for win positions. The Benko, I don't know. First of all, it has a lot of theory. Secondly, you'll get a lot of 3 knight f3 or 1 knight f3 once the word is out that you're a Benko player. So it doesn't really strike me as a repertoire. I've also fooled around quite a bit with these things like c4, e6, knight c3, c6. That's playable because you're sort of daring white to play e4, which most people won't be ready for. And takes, bishop b4, check this sharp stuff. So that's a good opening to have in the toolbox. Also, if your normal repertoire here is the Queen's Gambit Declined and it bothers you that these bishop g5 positions are too dry, you can play a different move here. c6 is the semi-Slav. Bishop b4, the Ragozin, I believe also leads to more unbalanced positions than bishop to e7. So I like staying in my comfort zone. I probably look at one of those because they are still related to these knight f6, e6, d5 structures that I and probably you feel more familiar in. And yeah, this d5, c4, e6, knight c3, c6, I've also dabbled with. a6, I think I talked about on a previous clinic. I thought takes, and queen b3 was a bit of an issue here. So I'm not sure that works well in this move order. Therefore, yeah, I don't know. If you're comfortable playing the Nimzo, then you might want to look into doing this. Of course, one needs a repertoire against Catalan, as we all do. And trying bishop b4 instead of bishop e7. I think that's a place where I would start looking. Or, of course, the good old Vienna. I did a video series about that one as well. But in general, yeah, there's no right answer. Of course, white is not worse, no matter what opening you choose. And there's also not the unclear, sharp, complicated position where black is not worse without paying a price for it. White is quite solid in chess, but yeah, those are my thoughts on what I would do, or what I actually do in these spots. Best of luck, SirAlbis. Sushi Boy, number 8. Not to be confused with the other Sushi Boys on this side. He's saying, "Hi Jan, what do you think is a good line for a 1 knight f3 player against the English Hedgehog and Hedgehog double fianchetto that is easy to learn and not completely harmless?" For the double fianchetto, you mean you want a line that's easy to learn, not completely harmless. That's the other eternal question. I want something that gives me some pressure, where I don't have to spend a lot of time on, and they will come as a surprise. If such things existed, they would become main lines, and then one would have to spend more time on them. So it's always a slippery slope with these openings. Anyway, knight f3, knight f6, c4, b6, g3, c5, bishop g2, bishop g7, bishop b7, and so on and so forth. I'll put it on the board. Is too complicated. I see. You made it all the way to the main position already there. With that kind of knowledge, I'd normally say you're good to go, and not that's too complicated. But I shall do my job for a change and give a simpler alternative that's hopefully not completely harmless. After knight c3, bishop g7, d4, that's the line he was talking about. C takes d4, queen d4 as mentioned is the main line, and for good reason. But I have some sympathy. I'm not sure how much, frankly. But I've dabbled with the idea of going knight takes d4 in this position, which people don't do, but it's not completely ridiculous, I thought. Bishop g2, king g2, high praise, not completely ridiculous. If black goes d5, he's supposed to be somewhat worse in... Oh, hang on, I'm mixing up the lines. Here d5, we just take. Knight takes d5. Doesn't work because of queen a4 check, so black is much worse if he goes for that. What I meant is if they go queen c8, which is a typical move, trying to fianchetto the queen and targeting the pawn. We go b3, queen b7 check, f3, and now d5. Then after cd, knight d5, knight d5, queen d5, bishop e3. Black still has some work to do to reach equality as far as I know, and this, well, it's obviously not winning, but I thought was sort of playable for white. And if black doesn't want to go d5, but instead, let's say, plays knight to c6, then some position like bishop to b2, short castles, e4, we get this typical type of Maroczy bind, which generally, I believe, is considered to be quite playable. Once again, not claiming a massive edge here or anything, but knight takes d4, I think has some value as a surprise. And the positions are not completely dead. As for the standard hedgehog, I never know what I do here either. Most of the time I'll probably just play d4, cd, queen d4. And then after castling rook d1, d6, let's say, I mix my lines up. Sometimes I go bishop g5. I think in recent times people have also started toying with b3 again. Knight b7, bishop b2, a6. And you get these typical slow-moving hedgehog positions after some stuff like this, where, well, it's certainly playable, but it's not obvious what white should do next. So it really depends on the mood and if you feel like a long maneuvering game, what to go for here. The alternatives are also fairly well known. You can go b3, bishop b2, or you can play rook e1, intending to play e4 and then d4. When you have to be ready for black playing knight to e4, I think that's what turns people off of it. So I don't have an answer. I'd probably play d4, cd, queen d4, and then, yeah, choose my next move, depending on opponent and situation and so on. I have some sympathy for these bishop g5 systems, but they're not really promising an edge either. Life is very tough. Black has so many systems that are solid, and currently, I have to admit, I haven't spent a lot of time recently. I'm a bit blank in this hedgehog territory as well. But yeah, I'd look into these rook d1, d6, b3 lines. Seems like there's been some action there recently. I hope that helps you, Mr. Sushi Boy, number 8. Then, who do we have? We have Luca Brasi, 1968. That can't be Luca Brasi's date of birth. When's the first Godfather movie? I should know such stuff, but I don't. It's early 70s, right? 71? I don't know. Anyway, Luca Brasi, 1968, is saying, "Hi Jan, thank you for a great show that I always enjoy watching. Thank you. I have some difficulties finding a system against the Grünfeld with white. We all do. I've tried 4 bishop f4 and the Russian system, but I really don't feel like it gives white anything. My question for you is, what do you think is the most challenging against the Grünfeld? And is there any Grünfeld expert from the white point of view to follow? Thank you very much." It's another of these things. Like the Grünfeld is a major opening and it's rather forcing, and it's a good opening. So I don't think, especially nowadays that computers are so strong, that anybody can have sustained success just playing one main line against the Grünfeld all the time and putting pressure on black. If there was such a thing, black players would figure it out. So it's hard for me to say, yeah, play this and follow whoever. Or play this and follow whoever. I don't think anybody reliably pounces away against the Grünfeld. What I believe most people do is if you see your opponent as a Grünfeld player, you play one knight f3. Or you play one c4. That makes life for Grünfeld players much harder. After knight f3, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, d5, cd, knight d5. There are a couple challenging systems, in my opinion, more challenging than the ones in the mainline Grünfelds. Here h4 is a very interesting move, which I've played, for example. Queen b3 also gives white fair chances for an advantage. So normally whenever I see the threat of a Grünfeld emerging, I go for this territory. And in general, I do believe it's very useful for d4 players to be able to play one knight f3 against the right type of opponent. Of course, you're also giving up something. Like if your opponent plays d5 and d4 lines, you can't put your knight on e2 anymore. But in general, against the Grünfeld, I'm more of an advocate of flexibility than playing that particular mainline. If you want theoretical debates, if we look, for example, at Svidler's games, big specialist in the Grünfeld, he struggled a bit against 3f3 recently. He lost 2 games against Schenkland and Ding Liren. So that's, in my book, also a more promising point to look than knight c3, d5 currently. Of course, these things could always change, but it looks like this is where the debates are going on. And yeah, either d5, cd, knight d5, e4. This has a big body of theory, but here you can follow pretty much any world-class player, Aronian, or whoever played the latest games here. There's been discussions. The problem from White's point of view is you have to be ready for different things. You have to be willing to play the same-ish, which most Grünfeld players won't be happy with though, or these types of Benoni positions after c5. Well, we've recently seen dc5, but in general, after c5, d5. So White has to cover a lot of ground here, also e6 and knight to c6. But if you're looking for most challenging, at the moment, I believe this is where the discussions are happening, and not so much in knight c3, d5. Once again, that could change any time in some line that I'm not currently aware of. After knight c3, d5 might all of a sudden become very popular. But that's where I'm at. For, I think, some years now, White players have mainly been avoiding the Grünfeld. Like you'll see the occasional memory check in whatever, 5 queen b3 or bishop f4 or whatever. But I think that's where the fashion currently is at. So, still haven't refuted the Grünfeld. I'll let you guys know when I do. Best of luck, Luca Brasi, 1968. Then we have Gustav Chatterjee, number 1. He's saying, hey Jan, in recent times, 4 bishop d2 against Nimzo has become very popular, championed by Qa6 and his second Ryazantsev. They both have played it at classical time controls and enjoyed quite good results. Few wins, almost 0 losses. Do you think this 4 bishop d2 is a good option for White to get maybe a very slight edge? Also Wesley So, when he faced the line, played something which seemed to give White an easy edge. But after all, it was the candidates, so it made me wonder whether there was some deep prep by Wesley. No, it wasn't. He just bungled the opening. Finally, if you think bishop d2 is good, fine. But if you think not, what is the line that causes it problems? I don't know. It's a move, as usual. Mainline opening, hard to get sustainable advantages, but bishop d2 certainly has gotten some airtime recently. So knight c3, bishop b4, bishop to d2. The main line is castles. I think we go e3, or you can start with knight f3, probably doesn't matter. d5, knight to f3. And yeah, this Wesley So game was strange. In general, I'm not a big fan of the move c5 here after a3. It seems to me like White is better. Wesley took here, but he was immediately in a very uncomfortable position. So yeah, this was not prep. This was, I don't know. Something strange happened to him. I think in my series I gave, and I still believe to be the most critical move, the move b6. Not going for immediate confrontation, but saying, okay, you're playing very slowly with bishop to d2. I'll put my bishop here, and then probably I'll keep my own bishop, withdraw to d6, e7, or rook e8, bishop f8. And we get a board full of pieces where, I don't know, it's hard to argue that White has an advantage, but you can certainly make the case that those are playable positions. Like the main line, I think it's smart to start with rook c1, not forcing this bishop back, because it wants to go back anyway, so a3 is sort of in inaccuracy. Black probably goes bishop to b7. Now what do they take at some point, right? CD, ed, bishop d3. And you get these types of positions where if Black was in time to play let's say a6, knight bd7 and bishop d6, he'd be very, very comfortable. But normally he won't be quite in time. For example, here after knight bd7, white goes knight to e5. And things aren't all that simple for black. You want to follow up with f4. And yeah, this seemed playable for white. And so, I don't know, currently I think they're playing setups like bishop back to e7, short castle c5. When I think black should be okay, but it's a board full of pieces, and there is certainly play left. So I do consider it to be a playable line. I also wouldn't be too scared about it with black, because you have many solid options in these positions after rook c1, bishop b7, cd is also the plan. With rook to e8, followed by bishop to f8. So black, yeah, certainly won't have sleepless nights about it. But it's a more venomous system than people have thought, as Ragozin, I think, was the first to come up with it. Or to play it regularly, I'm sure. There have been outings before. Have taught us. So yeah, not against it. Give it a shot. JohannWilhelmMoebius is saying, "Hi Jan, I have a question about the line e4 knight f6, e5 knight d5, d4 d6, knight f3, d e5, knight e5, c6 in the Alekhine. How should I deal with the possible knight jumps to f4 and b4? If I want to play 6 bishop e2, 7 castles and 8 c4. I'm thinking of lines like 6 bishop f5, castles, knight d7, knight f3, knight b4, or h6 knight b4, c4 knight b4. Should I save my rook or play for development? Knight c3, knight c2, rook b1, knight b4, bishop e3, knight b1, queen b1. And knight d7, knight f3, queen 7, castles, knight f4, bishop c4, e6, g3, knight g6. Very specific stuff. Normally such advantages don't work for black, no? To jump around with your knight that early. Let's see. Sorry, this is still from the old question. So e4, knight to f6, e5, knight d5, d4, d6. I've never studied the Alekhine seriously. In my blitz games, 1000% of people play c4, knight b6, e d6, and are slightly better. So if you don't want to worry about all these lines, you can just do that. But yeah, let's say knight f3, de, knight e5, c6, bishop e2. And what was it? Bishop to f5, weak castle, knight to d7, knight to f3. Knight b4 doesn't seem to work according to my compy. You just go c3, knight c2, knight h4. And he's blinking. Knight on the rim is dim. Lines continue. There's some sharp stuff here, but it didn't quite work for black. Knight e3, queen a2, knight d2. And sooner or later, this guy will bite the dust. Bishop d3, bishop b1, b3, bishop b2, stuff like that. So this position, yeah, just seems very unplayable for black. H6 looks even more artificial. Who has the time for that? C4, knight b4, a3, knight c2. And once again, switching on my compy, I could not help but notice the bishop d3. He's already claiming a win. Compies are good at this kind of stuff. The point is that after queen d3, knight a1, well, we're rook down. We have the pleasant little move queen f3 to play, threatening the f7 pawn when f6, queen h5 would not be ideal. And white is winning here. So, yeah, those things don't work for black. What was the other line? Knight d7, knight f3, queen c7, castles, knight f4. First of all, once again, I can refer to my wise computer that says you can ignore this and play rook to e1 here. And if white is allowed to go bishop f1, I guess it's just better. So black will probably want to take, but it looks like black isn't really in time to develop easily here, because white will harass him in the center very quickly. Let's say e6, c4, d5 is looming, bishop e7, bishop g5. White just gets a very nice coordinated position, playing natural moves here quite quickly. So that's one way to get an edge. Bishop c4 was the line, e6, g3, knight g6. Once again, I'm not sure about g3. But in general, the knight looks silly on g6, no? It's dominated by the pawn. So this does not look like a setup to be afraid of. I'm not sure what white should do. Like h4 looks tempting to me. I think Compy wanted to go knight to c3. Knight f6 and some aggressive move maybe. Knight g5, does that make any sense? Bishop g5 also looks very logical. The knight on g6 just strikes me as misplaced. So not a line to be afraid of, but I sort of like this Rookie 1 solution as well, just ignoring the guy. Say, congratulations, you've moved your knight 15 times, we'll exchange it, and then I'll crush you in the center. So overall, yeah, that's the kind of lines we're dreaming of black playing. But normally, unfortunately, they don't. But yeah, looks like white is very fine in your lines there, JohannWilhelmMoebius. DerWalker saying, hi Jan, thanks for your good advice, especially lately in the French. That is my passion indeed. Do you see any drawbacks in building up a wide repertoire based on one knight f3, 2 b3, except for one g6, one knight f3 to avoid e5 lines? I do see the drawback that you're not fighting for an opening advantage. But I'm not quite sure what you mean by drawback. Like, let's say knight f3, where knight f6, b3, g6. This is certainly a playable position for white, but you're also not making life very tough for black early on. Well, I think I like d5 in this position, actually. But anyway, no, I don't think there's direct drawbacks. It's not the most ambitious thing, and you still have to map out your plan, let's say. What do you do if I go here and go here? Or if I go there and go a6? Or if I just say, I don't care, what do you do? And I'll go here. But no, I don't think knight f3, b3 is bad per se. It's not what I would do, because it doesn't put all that much pressure on black, especially if word gets out that every game you will play knight f3 followed by b3. And there are some lines, like once black players start catching on, where they might try to irritate you with playing stuff like d6, bishop b2, e5, directed against this bishop. So yeah, it's not the most flexible of approaches, and it's not really fighting for an opening advantage, because yeah, you're committing to sort of a solid but not very aggressive setup early on. So it's the kind of thing that I would prefer doing once in a while as a surprise weapon, or against a very particular opponent where you feel, okay, this guy is too booked up, or I don't have anything against this guy's Grünfeld, so I'm just going to hit him with knight f3, b3 to get a game. In general, I like, even though normally I claim it's the main opening, there's nothing we can do, I like trying to fight for an opening advantage by playing something a bit more critical. But you're not worse, you can certainly play knight f3, b3, if it does rock your boat. Ugh, knight f3, b3 and the French. What a repertoire, DerWalker. I'm not sure we can be friends like that. And then we have knight 90. Fidemaster. He's saying, hi Jan, thanks for your great video series for Chess24 about Nimzo-Indian. Thank you. I prepared for my games during the summer tournaments, and I often got equal or slightly better positions with black. Glad to hear that. That is the goal. I have a small question about 4 queen c2, I'm assuming, Castle's 5e4 variation. After d5, e5, and so on, long forced line, you give a long line starting with cd5, after which resulting position with all heavy pieces is completely equal. It is indeed. Is it possible for black to avoid it, but at the same time not end up much worse? Once again, the eternal question, how can I avoid draws but not be worse? It's tricky, but I'll see what I can do. I mean, if I played against much weaker but good prepared opponent, I don't want to give him quite forced draw. Thanks in advance and good luck at the Olympiad for it. It's been a while. We've had these questions up. Yeah, thank you. Didn't quite work out. All right, so Nimzo. Queen c2. castles. For starters, if you play against weaker but well-prepared opponent, often I will not play castles here. I will play either d5 or even some random move like c5, dc, whatever, bishop c5, followed by queen b6, queen c7, bishop e7, some hedgehog where the pieces stay on the board, or even b6 I've dabbled with. So that's often what I will do if I end up in this position and I smell my opponent is in a solid mood. Because knight f3 or a3, they're also very solid moves. So yeah, that's point number one. e4 here. d6 is sort of playable. I don't really like it because I normally prefer fighting for the center and trying to equalize, but it's a move people have dabbled with when trying to get a game and keep a board full of pieces. I don't think it's bad. So bishop d3, c5 I think was one point. And there's some direct lines with e5, d, e, d, e, knight g4, which as far as I know are supposed to be holding for black. So that's one option if you stumble here into this and you feel like, okay, I should really keep pieces on the board. d6 certainly gets that job done. After d5, e5, knight e4, well, this is entering reasonably forced territory, and it is the attempt, and in my opinion, the way to equalize with black. So it gets a little tougher to avoid the forced lines here, because we are playing a forced line. cd, knight d4. Once you go for this, knight d7, bishop f4, queen h4, then stuff gets quite forcing indeed. By the way, recently I think Paco experimented with g3, queen h5, and h4 here against Wesley So, which is a very sharp line that I hadn't mentioned, so I'll do it here. Something like this. Very clicky territory. fe, e5, bishop e5, bishop takes g4, and black has full compensation. Not completely obvious at first sight, but rook a8 is coming and white does not really have a spot to hide his king. So e takes d, rook a8, wins back the piece, and black is okay. But it's certainly an interesting try by Vallejo to play h4 here. And yeah, once you reach this position after castles g5, I'm not sure there's a way out. Kramnik tried something against Nisipiano, but ended up just being worse. So I think that's hard to pull off once you get there. It's probably best to follow my advice and get the equal position. Here is maybe the last chance to deviate and play something like this. This keeps pieces and play on the board. I'm not sure it's as clean an equalizer as queen h4. But it certainly leads to more double-edged play. Yeah, probably this is the last exit to keep pieces on the board. It used to be more popular than it is now, I believe. People think white has chances for an edge here after bishop to e2. But it's certainly not a bad line. And as mentioned, it does keep more play in the position for sure. So yeah, those are the points to deviate. Of course, other than not playing the Nimzo, I would often do it on move 4 already, but I hope I've given you some other options on the way. Then, shall we do one more question, or shall we keep it for the next show? Now let's do one more by ErnoderEisbär. He's saying, Moin Jan, as black I like to play this line, d4, d5, c4, e6, knight c3, bishop b4, knight f3, knight f6, cd, ed, bishop g5, castles, e3, bishop f5, and so on. Sharp line of the Ragozin. Queen a6, rook b2, the resulting position is very sharp, and I like black's practical chances, since white has many possibilities to go wrong. However, I would like to know the objective evaluation of this line. In Nakamura vs Aronian and Dingliren vs Aronian, 9 queen takes c3 was played. Is this an indicator that black is fine after bc, knight b7, queen b7, or is there a line that puts black into trouble? I think black is fine as far as I know, at least. I'm still somewhat surprised that you want to play without including h6. I'm aware Aronian's done it as well, so there's certainly some point to it, but the more trendy stuff is to go for this position with h6 included. And I hope I'll be able to explain the difference. So, maybe I won't be able to explain the difference. In your line after CDED, bishop g5, castles e3, bishop f5, queen to b3. Sorry, 1 second. I'm struggling from acute memory loss. Queen b3, bishop c3, bc, knight bd7, queen b7, rook b8. Almost there, sorry, confused myself. Knight c3, bishop b4, cded, bishop g5, castles e3, bishop f5, queen b3, bishop c3, bc, knight bd7, queen b7, rook b8, queen a7, rook a8, queen b7, rook b8, queen a6, rook b2. I've checked this a bit, and it does seem to me like the black position should be playable here after bishop e2. What was it? Queen b8, right? Or even queen a8. Sorry, do I have the right position now? Sorry, I'm being so slow about this. Queen a7, queen b7, rook b8, queen a6, rook b2. I do have the right position, right? Yeah. Yeah, I did think that black was okay, but I thought black was even more okay with h6, bishop h4 included, if that makes sense. And you can achieve that by going h6, bishop h4, short castles, e3, bishop f5, and going for exactly the same line. And here, this stuff no one does with white. Because here after rook b2, now I get what point I was trying to make. After rook b2, queen a3, queen b8. Let's say bishop to e2. No, let's say no. Sorry. Knight d2 to stop rook b1 check. I did manage to completely confuse myself. I forgot what point I had, which is annoying, but you're gonna have to trust me that I did have a point in these lines, that it's easier for black to play with h6, bishop h4 included than with bishop g5. Sorry for the last 2 minutes. I'm trying to remember my clever point here, but I can't quite do it. So what I'm mainly saying is that I think your line is fine. I see very little downside to including h6, bishop h4. But since I believe this position that you've pointed out is playable as well, there might be no particular need to do it. And in general, in such positions, if you've looked at them at home, and as you mentioned, white has many ways to go wrong, then normally you'll be the better prepared player and you can give it a shot without taking too many risks. The one upside this has for white is that here, if you go h6, you can still include bishop f6. While in the positions with h6, bishop h4, he has to reckon with g5, knight e4. I had one specific example in a line where I wanted to illustrate this, but I can't recollect. I'm sorry about that. So ErnoderEisbär, yeah, according to my clicking and according to my deep point, which I can't remember at all. Black is fine in both these lines, and as you mentioned, if top players start playing 9 queen takes c3 instead of 9 b takes c3 in such a direct line, you can normally trust them that they have done their homework and concluded that after b takes c3, knight b7, queen b7, there's nothing for white. Therefore, I believe that this is a very playable setup for black. But for the third time, I see very little upside for not including h6 followed by bishop h4, which is the line that most of the top players have nowadays adapted with the black pieces, and that is a very serious roadblock for white. So I'd look into that if I was you, but for now you can also certainly continue playing the line without h6, bishop h4, because I'm not aware of any serious issues there. So yeah, apologies for sort of bungling that last question. I still can't think of my point. I had some really clever point with h6, g5. Anyway, that's it for today's opening clinic. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Forgive me, Erno. Bye.